Good morning, everyone. Good morning, and welcome to another episode of Working the Dash with TK. We are so excited that you have joined us today. And I cannot wait to delve into a conversation that definitely needs to be had amongst not only parents and educators, but amongst pastors and students and community leaders. We're going to be talking today with subject matter expert in the educational field. We're going to be speaking to Dr. DeMetra Williams, and she's going to shed some light on a very needed conversation. So before we get started, I would love for you to share this broadcast. If you know of a teacher, if you know of a principal, make sure you share this broadcast with them, because we're going to be talking about some things. And also, we're going to be sharing her latest authorship. She is an author, and we're going to be sharing that book with you, Leading While Broken. So I'm so excited today to welcome to the stage none other than my friend, my sister, and colleague in education, none other than the DeMetra Williams. How are you today?
Good morning, sis. How are you doing today?
I'm doing just fine, and I'm just so excited that you have taken the time to join. So now let's get the best things out first. First, let's acknowledge that we both have on red lipstick, okay? And we have on red lippies, and we're just so excited. Mine is of course, from the Doll Face by TK line. And I am just happy. Today I'm wearing red lipstick because she is you all guessed it, she's a Delta. So, and she wore blue for me because I'm a what?
She's a Zeta.
Okay, so we are just excited about that. So now that we've cleared that out of the way, first, let me tell you, you look absolutely adorable. You look beautiful. And thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule. You are a mother, you are a wife, you are a pastor's wife. And there's a lot that encompasses who you are. So I am so excited that you're able to take time. And one of your most important jobs of being a mother, we know that right now we have someone who's pulling on your time. He literally asked prior to the broadcast starting about how long this is going to take, because he's ready to have his friends over and he's ready to enjoy a normal Saturday, right? So welcome. Welcome again. And thank you for bringing to the stage your brain in the game and your expert voice in the realm of education. I'm going to get out there in the field in just a moment and acknowledge those that are joining in. And I do see some principals here, Dr. Crystal Rouse. I see her here. So there are some principals and there's some educators that are already joining us. So I'm very excited about the platform today. We're going to be talking about in a tumultuous time that we're living in right now, Dr. Williams, how important it is for parents and students and educators to come together as a community and really bind together and really ensure that this time does not affect the education of our young people. As we lay the foundation for this conversation, will you please kind of just give us a little bit of insight on what's happening in the education arena as you serve as an instructional coach for teachers and educators across the community?
All right, this has been, of course, a difficult time in education. I've been in education for the past 19, almost 20 years, and no other time has ever been like this for educators. And so teachers are dealing with students in classroom. Some teachers are doing dual enrollment where they're dealing with kids in the classroom and still working with kids on the computer, which they were never taught. We have a lot of teachers that were switched over to virtual education and they never wanted to teach virtually. We have teachers that are dealing with COVID cases at home, COVID cases in their schools. And so teachers, we've always been a little bit some kind of nurses, counselors, mothers, we've done a lot in education, but this time teachers have been asked to do so much more. There are so many things that are on the plates of teachers that have never been there before. They have to be first responders now. Now they're having to, be more of a counselor, more of a, hey, make sure your mask is on, to kids and even change the way they actually teach. Some people have been, teaching, they've been in the game for 20 and 25 years, and they have to change the way they teach. They had to change their pedagogy on what they thought about education. So this has been crazy for teachers because they have to come up with a new way to educate kids, and they had to do it on a dime. They had to switch on a dime with no education, no formal training. They had to switch on a dime. And so I want to tell all educators, first of all, we are proud of you and we salute you and we thank you for still staying in there, because they are exiting now in droves. But for all the teachers that are still there, let's give them a hand clap, Sister TK, just to salute and honor them, because we're so excited that they're still in the education field. And so there's so much going on now with education. A year ago in 2020, they were talking about how teachers were so needed, but now we're talking about salaries and it's not matching the needs that we have. And so there's so many conversations, training for teachers, salaries for teachers. Let's talk about, more support for teachers, parental collaboration. It is so much going on in education right now, Sister TK, that it can be a lot of conversations about a lot of different things.
So, as you bring up the collaboration of parents and the involvement that they have in their child's education, not just the involvement or the engagement, what can parents do to potentially help teachers in this shattering and most emotional time? Most parents right now are having to make very difficult decisions about perhaps maybe not going to work and having to do homeschool, or deciding whether they're not going to work so that their child can actually be online. What can parents do, or what is the real responsibility of a parent?
I think the number one responsibility is to get involved. We have so many hands-off parents that let the teachers do everything. Although it's so many things on my plate, I am the vice president of the PTO of my son's school. I am the president of the SAC program at his school, because I want to be involved. And studies show when parents are involved in their child's education, their child gets a better education, and teachers respect them. And if they get that 79.2, they'll bump that up to an 80 if the parent is involved. So get involved in the child's school and let the teachers, the admin, the other parents see you. I know we're exhausted and I know we're busy, but I always tell people this came with the responsibility when I said, yes, I wanted to have a baby, right? I knew at some point that my son was going to go to school. And so I had to be a mom to a kid that was in school. And so there are reasons why I stay in the position that I'm in and not go higher in the education field, because I have a child right now that's only in elementary that needs me to be involved, that can go to meetings and talk about 504s and IEPs and have some kind of knowledge. And so we ask parents to get involved and figure out what's going on in your child's classroom, because sometimes the child you see at home is not the child they see at school. So that's important too. We got Sister TK. Your kid can act a fool.
Right. So a lot of parents met their 7-ish to 3 p.m.ish child during 2020. They met that student. And I can venture to say that it was probably a very shell shock for a lot of parents to see the student that they send to school versus the student that they feel like they raised, right? And so now it's no longer the parent saying that wasn't my child that did that, because
right.
Your child did that.
Yes.
So you met that child during the course of COVID-19 at the height of it, when it started in 2020. So since the time that we've been impacted by COVID-19 since 2020, it seems like we might be going a little backwards. What are your thoughts on that dimensional conversation?
So the educational gap is only widening now. At some point, we were bringing it closer and closer. And I'm talking about with our population of students, Sister TK, with the African American population, that educational gap, because we don't have the resources where other people had resources to have their kids stay at home, even having internet and Wi-Fi. all of our students did not have internet and Wi-Fi, computers at home, access to somebody who knew the work they were dealing with. For example, my son can ask me questions about his homework and I can help him. He can ask his father, he can ask us, and sometimes the parents aren't able to help. And so, yes, we are going backwards with the educational gap. It is absolutely growing, and the educational gains are not, they're not going higher. They're actually going lower with all the testing that they've done. They changed the testing for 2020, but for the state of Florida, we still tested in 2021, and those educational gains are actually shrinking and decreasing. So I want parents to know, I want you to give your teacher grace because they're doing the very best they can. Give yourself grace. And so when things are going backwards, no teachers are going to try to implement anything that they can. They're working on strategies. Teachers are always going through some kind of training, some kind of policy that they have to do. And so please understand, when they're asking for you to have your kids finish, these 2 assignments from your dojo, from iReady, from Reading Plus, or they are trying to help your child, because the gap for African American students is getting wider and wider as COVID continues.
Wow. I mean, this is just so amazing. It's so insightful. And thank you so much for your expertise in the field. And being that you've been in education for 20 years, I think we've probably known each other for maybe half that time. But since the time I've known you, you've been in education. You actually walked through your doctorate program. I remember very vividly when you were even going through that and trying to do the best that you can to upgrade, like you said, gain resources and things of that nature. As we talk about or segue the conversation into how education has taken on a more technological approach, and in the African American communities and probably some Latina communities, we do not see that technology is given as widely as it is in other communities. Would you say that technology suppresses the in-person education? If so, is it hurting us? Is it helping us? Is the resource of technology a cop out for teachers? Is that the real the feeling that surrounds in-person study? We're looking at right now in a state where teachers are being locked out of their in-person or their virtual platforms because they're calling for teachers to come in. So how has technology really affected the educational platform during this time?
So there are 2 trains of thoughts. Let's talk about how technology is positive first. That gives us more access. Lady TK, you remember when we had to do research, we had to go to the Encyclopedia Britannica. When we wanted to research anything, it was the Encyclopedia Britannica, and my parents did not have every volume. So I had to go to the school and do research. And so now kids have access to anything and everything. That's helpful and kind of hurtful at the same time. But so technology in itself is just a resource. If it's used as a resource, it's helpful. If it's used as the end all be all, it's hurtful. Because in person, kids still need asynchronous education. They need to see a teacher. I've been in virtual instruction for over 9 years, and we offer in-person, face-to-face time with kids because 90% of the kids that love virtual school still want to see a teacher. They still want to ask a teacher a question. And so for our program, we're more hands-on with our kids. We call our kids, hey, let's talk about module 3. What did you learn? So even though kids are at home, they still want and need to see a teacher. So if technology is used as a resource, it's extremely helpful. But it's important also to train the people on the use of technology. StreamYard is good. If you don't know how to use StreamYard, it won't be good for you. So it's important to give technology, but also provide the training for the technology. So, hey, I'm giving you the internet, but let me show you some tools on what you can do on the internet. Hey, I'm giving you Google, but Google can be good or bad. And it can, even YouTube. I tell people everything is on YouTube. I call it YouTube University, but YouTube can also take you down a rabbit hole. So it's important that we use technology as a resource and not as the end all be all for help for teachers, because teachers are still needed. The amount of teachers I said leaving is astronomical. We can't find subs. Admin they're going in classrooms because teachers are getting sick, and honestly, teachers are tired. You have to realize when COVID happened, it was right after spring break for some teachers, and they came back having to be completely different, and they're exhausted. That summer, they really didn't have a summer off because they were trying to learn, new things. How do I teach in class and on the computer at the same time? And so I think if it's used as a resource, it is definitely helpful, but it's important to give training to anybody that's using the new technology.
It's amazing that you say how teachers had to kind of jump right in. A lot of the teachers did not even have their own computers. A lot of teachers were very afraid of the internet, and they were very afraid of technology, and then having to just segue into a demographic of young people who the internet is all they know. And you mentioned encyclopedias. Oh yes, the great encyclopedia. No informational highway. That highway was you actually literally getting in your car and your parents driving you to a library, and you're spending your time there in a library catalog. Can you imagine? We were like looking through cards, and we had right. And we were trying to understand what these little numbers meant on these little bitty cards. And now teachers have been placed in situations where they've had to work with a demographic of the I, Y, and Z gens who all they know is the computer, and all they know is technology. And so thank you so much for saying what parents need to do to be involved. There are so many demographics of young people who really just cannot afford to be at home. Most parents need the in-person educational system simply because that's really how they eat. A lot of students cannot even eat unless they actually go to school. How can we collectively expose ourselves to a more concrete future of helping, like just deliberately trying to help answer these questions of students who actually need in-person schools in order to live happy and to live healthy?
I think it's important that we go back to the village raises a child. The village has not raised a child in the past 15 years. It's been, don't talk to my child like that. Don't, in my neighborhood, growing up, if somebody in my neighborhood saw me doing something wrong, they could get on me, and then they would tell my parents that they got on me. Not now. We're saying, don't talk to my child like that. Don't chastise my child. For example, maybe there's one house in the neighborhood that has Wi-Fi because they can afford it. Have they offered to share it with anybody? Have the Black communities and the Black businesses in those communities said, hey, I'll offer my Wi-Fi to, if you want to bring your child here or bring them to a park, I'll get a hotspot for people. I don't think we've come together as a Black collective to make sure our Black kids are okay. I don't think that, somebody got in a car and said, hey, I understand this area, they don't have Wi-Fi. I'm going to bring a hotspot in my car, and I'm going to leave it here for a couple of hours so they can have hotspot, so they can have internet. I don't think we've gotten together and said, hey, let's make sure every one of our kids has a computer. Let's make sure every one of our kids has a tablet. We haven't done that. We're giving our money to other places. Think about how much we spend on, let's just talk about African-American women. How much money do we spend on hair care a year? Sis, my bundles cost a lot, and that's because I want to use them over and over again, right? My bundles cost as much as a computer. Then what happens if we say, hey, we're going to sponsor, even as churches, the Black church hasn't gone in the community and said, hey, let our church be a safe haven for kids where they can go throughout the day. Because a lot of our church mothers are retired educators. And so maybe they can sit with the kids, everyone masked up, maybe have just a couple of kids with Wi-Fi, a safe environment, and feeding them. We can get food to give out. We can find grants. It's important to do your research to find grants where you can feed kids at your church after school, where you can provide computers and tablets for these kids. And so I think us as a Black community, we have not 100%, some people have, but we have not stepped up to make sure our kids are, one, have the technology they need, and two, are exposed to other things. We talk about STEM programs. Where are our people coming back to our community telling our kids about STEM programs? My husband does it. He talks to young people all the time. It's not very many Black architects, but he talks to kids about being an architect. He goes back to the school and said, hey, I'm from this neighborhood. You don't have to be a product of what your neighborhood and what your environment is. You can come out of that. But it's our job as the adults because we blame kids for a lot. Kids only do what they're allowed to do. And so us as adults, we need to come in as a village to come and raise our kids again. As a Black community, the Black church, come back and find what is the needs assessment for your area. If you're a pastor, if you're a youth minister, if you're a youth leader in your church, what is the needs assessment for the area of the kids? Not necessarily the kids at your church. Most of our churches are in the inner city. What's the needs assessment for your neighborhood? How can your church meet a need? If it's food, how can your church provide food? If it's technology, how can you partner with Apple, Microsoft, and get computers and tablets to the kids? Because I promise you, they have to give money to 501c3s. They have to give grants. So find out how your church and your community can partner with these organizations and get technology. Maybe you don't have the money, but you have the wherewithal to know how to write a grant. That's important too. And it's important to find out what people have. Like I said, maybe somebody has money to donate. Somebody has the ability to write a grant. Somebody can edit. Somebody knows how to read and get information and share it. So it's important that we as a collective come back together and get back into the communities and go back to our village to raise a successful next generation of kids and not be upset. Oh, it doesn't matter. We need to show back love. Kids respect, and they respect love. When I taught in one of the toughest schools in this city, people, they asked me why I didn't have issues with kids, because my kids knew I loved them and they know it was genuine. And so I can look at them real like, what are you doing? You don't do that in my class. And they understood that because they know at one time I'll look at you crazy, but the next time I'm the one you don't have food, baby, let me get you some food. I bought shoes for kids. I'm a teacher salary, but God is blessed. And so we need to go back and figure out what our kids need. And we need to do it for them. We need to quit waiting on somebody. We need to do it.
I mean, this is a real serious drop the mic moment, because you have summed up in just so well our responsibility to the community. That village connection that you speak of, you're absolutely right. There are so many things that we say that we can't do, but what is it that we are doing with the resources that we have? Sure, I have Wi-Fi. Can I sponsor a child one day to come and use my Wi-Fi? Can I take them to McDonald's, or just say, hey, if your parent is willing to sit with you and utilize and McDonald's is not paying me to say this. I'm not a sponsor for McDonald's. I just know that they just happen to have Wi-Fi. I know other restaurants that will allow you to use Wi-Fi at no charge. There are just so many things that we can do, as opposed to not sitting around and complaining about the resources that we do not have. So even in this cold time, we're right now, we're in the dead blast middle of winter. Parents, this really has to involve you not being lazy. You can't just step your toe out and say it's cold outside and I don't want my child going to school. You have to be so engaged and so intentional during this time to get the education that you need. Now, when you and I were growing up, a lot of information came from the school. In this time frame, you have to go to the school to get the information. So parents, it really does involve an intentional, influx of what's happening out there. What can my child do differently? I don't knock sports. I don't knock drama clubs and things of that nature. But what is something else outside of that arena? Those things that are so common to our community. What is something else that's going to take my child to the next level? Mm-hmm. Dr. Williams, you have done such a phenomenal job here. And I know you have a son that's probably looking at you cross-eyed right now because he's ready for his friends to come in. And you have definitely told him it will be after this interview. So as we start to wrap up, you've given such great information. And I see a vice principal here, Camille Jefferson, who's chiming in with students cooperate 100% when they have love. And I'm so excited to hear that. And thank you so much. Those of you who have joined the conversation and perhaps just now joining the conversation, I would that you would go back and listen to some of the information. We're talking about education now at 6 feet, right? Education at 6 degrees, education at 6 feet, and the distance of education and how we can actually be involved. I want you all to share this and go back and make sure that you understand, share this with educators again. And I'm hoping that principals and leaders and teachers are encouraged today by some of the things that they heard. And I'm just hopeful that you all, let me tell you that you're doing a great job out here. Let me say to the substitutes that are having to deal with other people's children. Let me just talk to the substitutes for a while. The substitutes out there, thank you so much for yielding and volunteering your time. The days that you could actually call in and stay under your blanket, you are saying, let me go in and substitute. Thank you, Dr. Williams, for also bringing up the strategies that churches could use as a collective. If your church has Wi-Fi, make it open and available for students to come in and utilize that, because we want to make sure that churches are definitely infused, knowing that they can also be a part of the answer. You can be a part of the solution. So yes, I see Sylvester Smith saying that you are right on target. So thank you so much for that. And as we close, I wanted to close with something very, very wonderful here. I want to segue outside of the conversation of you being a 20-year plus veteran in the educational arena. And I want to talk to you about your new phase of authorship. You have authored a book entitled Leading While Broken. And I want you to talk about that book. I'm going to put you on screen so you can kind of talk to leaders about this segment.
All right, thank you for this opportunity. My title of my book is called Leading While Broken, because as leaders, we go through things and we have been broken, we have been hurt, we've been devastated. But the one thing is, we cannot stop leading. You can't stop being a wife. You can't stop being a mom. You can't stop being the CEO, the boss, the educator. You cannot stop. And you have to do it while you're hurting. You have to do it in the midst of your brokenness. And so I authored a book to help leaders go through that process and to realize you are not going through it alone. And you're not the only person that has dealt with that situation. Because at the time when I wrote my book, I didn't even want anybody to know that I was broken. I wanted people to think that I had it all together. I made sure I dressed right, I looked right, my face looked right, my clothes looked right. And so I would go out with a mask on with people thinking I always had it together. But then I realized there had to be other people out there dealing with the same situation, and I could help them because I know I needed help. And so the book is an actual journal. And so it makes you think about the things, why you're broken, how you got to that place. And it starts deep early. Chapter 1, it starts deep. And I know my editor and my publisher is on, Dr. Courtney is on here. And so I just want to say thank you, because she helped me and we walked through it, because at first it was just a book and we turned it into a journal, because we thought that people would need to write, throughout the process, because writing can help you process things. And it is so good to see Dr. TK, or Lady TK. That's one of my former students. When you have relationship with kids, I promise you, it'll last forever. They know our babies recognize they can be grown, 28, almost 30 plus. They know that you always love them. So thank you, Kirby, for showing up and showing love to one of his favorite teachers. I'm gonna say that. But so my book is entitled Leading While Broken. It can be found on Amazon. If you have my information, it's DeMetra Williams on Facebook, and you can follow me and you can order it and get a signed copy from me, or on Amazon. It won't be signed, but you can get it on Amazon as well. But just to help leaders go through their situations, because Lady TK, we go through stuff as leaders, and we have to keep that smile on our face and keep leading at the same time. And that book helps you process that, going through that brokenness.
Well, I have my book. And, so I did something. I put you on screen by yourself so I can go and get my book. I love this book. It is a very informative journal. And you stated something. You said you had on a mask. This book was written prior to the pandemic. And so she's not speaking of a physical mask. Many of us are already and have been, prior to March of 2020, we have been in mask, and we have learned how to unmask that during this time, because it is so important that we lead with transparency. So the book entitled Leading While Broken, written by Dr. DeMetra Williams, is available on Amazon. And like I said, you can also reach out to her. I would that she would put her information in this chat after we are finished. She can put that here. And we have been speaking to her today about the distance of education as a 20-year plus veteran and a subject matter expert in the educational arena. She leads teachers and students as an instructional coach. I want you to go back and listen to this as we wrap this session up and promise to her son that we would be finished in 30 minutes. We are at 31:29. We owe him a few minutes back, so make sure you buy him something great and give him my regards. Thank you so much for joining us today. Before we close, I want to welcome you once again to just encourage, give last minute encouragement to teachers, educators, principals, parents, even pastors in the village that you talked about. Give them one last piece of encouragement that will allow them to continue going through the best way of this time with the looming issues that surround the topic of education.
Well, before I do that, I want to make sure I give my husband a shout out, Pastor Jeffrey P. Williams Jr. I love you, babe. We love you and we support you. Amen. Make sure you're still praying for my husband. Amen. So I got to give my baby a shout out because I ain't say his name the whole interview. And amen. Amen. I'm a wife first. All right. So let's talk to educators. Once again, I want to tell you how proud we are of you. We are so proud that you pivoted on a dime. You are still in the education field. You are in a field where you aren't paid for everything you know. And we want to say thank you. You're not paid for everything you do. We want to say thank you. And you're not paid for everything you give. And we want to say thank you because you give more than you get. You love more than you're supposed to. And you love sometimes those tough kids that other people wouldn't love. So we want to say thank you. We honor you and we support you. And so for those that are parents, please make sure you do something for your child's teachers. I always make sure throughout the year my kids' teachers get stuff. They love having me as a parent because I know what it's like to be a teacher. Not just on Christmas, just to say thank you, just a message saying I appreciate you. Let's teachers know that they're doing the right thing. So I want any parent that has a student to this evening, I want you to email. You should have your child's email your teacher and say thank you. You're doing a great job. So teachers, we want to say thank you. We honor and we support you. We understand you're underpaid. And so let's find resources to help teachers and support our teachers. Lady TK, thank you for this opportunity to talk. You love teachers and we thank you for that. You love education. You are in the education field yourself, but you absolutely love teachers. And we want to say thank you because your love always goes out and shows. And so thank you. Thank you so much. And teachers, we give you grace. And I want you to give yourself grace. And it's okay to not be okay.
What a phenomenal presentation. And thank you so much for bringing your expertise to this platform today. Thank you everyone out there who joined us. We are getting ready to close this segment of Working the Dash with TK. But I just thank you so much for coming and joining in the conversation entitled The Distance of Education. Until next time, thank you all so much for joining, and we'll see you at another time. Be blessed.